My name is Tobias Borck. I'm the Senior Research Fellow for Middle East Security Studies here at the Royal United Services Institute. On the 7th of November, we had an event at RUSI looking at the regional developments in the Middle East in light of Hamas's attack on Israel on the 7th of October and the war that has since followed. In that event, I was joined by Ambassador Jonathan Cohen, the former US Ambassador to Egypt and the United Nations, and now a distinguished fellow here at RUSI, as well as Louise Kettle and Michael Stevens, both of which are associate fellows at RUSI as well. And in that discussion, we looked at the regional implications of the war in Gaza that is taking place at the moment. But we also looked a little bit beyond, and we went into a discussion about regional stability and how countries in the region are looking at regional stability and understanding regional stability. And I think what became clear from that discussion was that while, of course, this current crisis will have a significant impact on the stability of the region going forward, there are also some big fundamental issues that have existed before this crisis and will continue to exist after this crisis as well. And those include, for example, a big question about the future role of the United States as the sort of traditional security guarantor of the region, as well as emerging challenges for the region. And there I'm thinking in particular of climate change and climate action, both of which have the potential to upend quite a lot of the systems on which the region is built.
One of the things that strikes me about this current conflict is that we in the West, in our liberal democracies, are backing Israel four square. The rest of the world looks at the situation, the global South, South America, China, India, they look at this and they are supporting the Palestinians. So we are the ones who are kind of isolated. I just wonder, with America's decline, does the region need a security guarantor? It's not going to be Russia. It's not going to be China. Who would it be? Or can it figure it out itself? Thanks.
It's not lost on me that one of my clients going to COP28 is arriving on his private jet. Yeah, look, and it's a bit performative, isn't it? Having said that, I don't want to be sort of glib. I held a roundtable in Riyadh a week, 10 days ago, talking to two young Saudis about their perceptions of climate change and to a number of health NGOs about the impacts that climate change were having on the Saudi population, and actually it was well understood. Just a really interesting offshoot. There's a massive surge in heart and cardiovascular disease in Saudi Arabia because people aren't walking because it's too hot for many parts of the year for them to go out and exercise. And this is well understood by the Crown Prince and others. The issue actually we were discussing was the funding shortage, because when you get a population bump of people going from age 30 to age 50 and above, then you have a real issue. And the Saudis were being very clear to me that their most sort of stringent challenge is going to be finding the money for all the healthcare that's coming. So at least they were thinking about it. You talk to Aramco, there's a lot of big bets on hydrogen. There's a lot of big bets on sustainable technology. It is happening. These conversations are real. Those of you that have Qatari friends will have not failed to notice the flooding that took place in the middle of November. It doesn't rain in Qatar in November. I lived there for many years. It never rained in November. It always rained in late December and January. Things are changing. They don't have the infrastructure to drain the water away. They've started to see waterborne diseases as a result of this. So the second order effects are all cascading. It's all very clear to see. The question is going to be how quickly can these states move from the sort of performative to the real action? And look, COP28 is a mixture of very sort of diverse and complex climate processes, most of which are involved with trying to find enough money to deal with people displaced in Pakistan, or the movement of the malaria mosquito, or huge problems you're having now with displaced people in South Asia whose livelihoods have been destroyed. A lot of people have come to the Gulf states and asked for money, and the Gulfies have said there's only enough money for X amount of help, and then everybody's on their own. So this is one of the biggest challenges that I'm currently dealing with. But I would say that, you know, it is understood. The issue is not so much, I think, in the Gulf. It's or Israel, which is also capable of managing its climate insecurity. It's more places like Morocco and Algeria, where you've got vastly, rapidly increasing desertification. Iraq, I'm really worried about, frankly. I think you could see a complete collapse of agricultural systems in Iraq within 20 years if things keep going the way they are. Irresponsible damming of the Tigris and the Euphrates upstream, poor water management in eastern Syria, which, by the way, is still seeing some ISIS penetration and control over natural resources. So I think this is all sort of understood. I just don't know if the resources are necessarily going to be there to tackle it. And what will worry me, I think, at COP28 is that we'll be talking about the big picture questions and mitigation and 1.5 degrees C, when actually some of the real effects are happening now, particularly in the poorest areas.
So just super quick on the climate bit, I think one of the fascinating things, especially about these three countries here, is that both climate change is a destabilizer, but so is climate action, right? Because climate action, certainly when it goes to decarbonization or defossilization, is completely undermining the entire political economy on which these countries are built. And by the way, not just these countries, ultimately the entire Middle East's political economy is built around fossil fuels. So I think that sort of the other bit just on the book, I mean, it's climate also hardly ever came up in any of the conversations about stability or instability. I think that goes to Mike's point. That's a conversation that's only beginning now. On the security guarantor question, I think one of the key drivers of instability identified certainly by all those three countries was this perception that the US no longer cares, that the US is turning away, that the US is withdrawing. And yes, you can put on the one side that, you know, troop levels, etc., numbers, but often it's not about the facts, it's about the perceptions, right? So, and the perception is certainly that, and that in itself is a destabilizing factor. When it comes to stability from all those three countries' perceptions, what would create stability is a world in which the big powers all care, and if the US cares less, then hopefully the others will care a little bit, but they won't compete. And that, of course, goes back to one of the arguments that Mike made earlier, which is this question of competition, which is a drive of instability. And I think what we've seen of the response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine was this, one of the drivers of not wanting to pick sides is not wanting to set a precedent of picking side between global powers. Because picking sides between Russia and the US is not that hard, but picking sides between the US and China is impossible.
Just to build one thing on that, the kind of security guarantor thing, and the perception of withdrawal versus the reality. But I actually think that has been one of the drivers towards normalization. I mean, there are many, but that is certainly one, is that this perception of the US withdrawal has sort of forced conversations that otherwise might not have happened.